All right.
Well, welcome.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I guess in Texas, it's afternoon. Good
Afternoon,
afternoon,
yeah.
Preston. Yeah. Welcome.
Welcome from wherever you're tuning in. I know we probably have some people from various time zones across the world here, so it's really exciting to be part of the Global XR and also share a little bit of our kind of Dallas AR VR ecosystem here.
That's
Uh,
correct.
I'm Preston McCauley. I'll be kind of handling the presentation, and my co-founder here is Ron Dagdag.
Yes. Welcome, everyone. I'm glad to be here and help you out.
So we got a lot to cover today. This is a this is our fifth annual review. We tend to do this as an annual event now for many years, and I don't like to miss these. So I hope you find a lot of this information very valuable. Let's kick it off, shall we?
Sure.
So myself, I'm Preston McCauley. It's a pleasure to meet you. 20 years professional experience building technology solutions with AR and VR. I'm also, as mentioned before, one of the co-founders of the Dallas AR VR group, where we host a lot of events in alt space and various other areas around the ecosystem. I'm a co-founder and teacher of the SMU Global UX program, and I also teach AR and VR design methodology there. And in addition to that, I work a lot on multidimensional UX challenges and problems and my own design approaches for approaching this medium. In addition, I'm a developer, designer, product manager, and of course, speaker. So our agenda today is going to be fairly quick. We're going to talk a little bit about the current market space, valuations, a word about AR and VR, some of the growth. We're going to dive a bit deeper into some of the areas and dimensions of the medium, hardware, potential use cases, some audiences. And then we're going to jump into what everybody likes to look at is really kind of, every year I tend to make predictions both for the year coming up as well as for kind of a 5-year kind of forecast. So we take a look at kind of what those predictions were in the past and see kind of how close was I. I like to know how close I am, but I try to follow the industry pretty close from a day in and day out standpoint. So I'm really excited to share some of that with you today. So as an industry overall, the market size, we're expected to potentially hit around $200+ billion in investment. That's both in hardware and software by the end of 2025. That's still a little bit lighter than the forecast, most likely because of some of the pandemic and such and chip issues and manufacturing issues and such. It did actually stunt growth a little bit in some of the different areas and different market spaces. If we take a look about kind of where we see a lot of the regional growth, specifically for virtual reality, and also this holds true as well for augmented reality, we're still seeing a lot of growth here in the United States, very high-end level AR growth and experiences in VR. And in other countries, like such as South America, and Africa and other smaller other countries around the world, we're seeing a kind of a mid-tier growth. That's held true for the last couple of years, and it'll probably still hold true for several more years. There are other countries, of course, where we've seen a huge uptick in AR usage, specifically around Korea, Japan, and other areas in that sector of the world. There are still some low usages in some of the places that you would expect. And, it'll be interesting to watch and see how this kind of changes and transforms as we continue forward in the future. So a lot of people ask me, hey, Preston, what are some of the industries? Where should I be investing my money? What am I going to be putting it in? Where should I be working, right? Well, there's clearly a few key sectors that have really emerged over the last few years and have certainly kind of solidified over the last month and last year as well. Definitely seeing a huge uptake in entertainment, gaming, and sports, and media, social experiences. We're not just talking about just VR gaming or AR gaming, but we're thinking about as well as appearing in sports venues and the media, brand marketing and advertising. Retail and transportation is also having a little bit of kind of a foray, a jump into some of the AR and VR space. We're definitely seeing some changes and transformations there. Health and medical has always been something that's really leaning heavily towards a lot of VR usage, specifically with surgical training and implementation of different types of programs and learning capabilities, which piggybacks nicely on top of training and education. When you take a look at training and education, there's a big sector specifically working on that. The beautiful part about that is it can really tap into any type of industry or vertical when you're working on the training and education area. And then we're starting to see even a more lift on the real estate and construction side of things, is previs and helping people to understand kind of what's going to happen as you redevelop areas. You're going to see new buildings come to life, what happens when you do remodels, things like that. Certainly AR and VR. Myself, I actually started to use VR to remodel some of my own house. So I really believe in taking the technology and trying to apply it to kind of practical and everyday situations. So at the end of the day, it's going to be really important for people to feel comfortable and confident that they're being able to build something that's going to ultimately represent what VR and AR can bring to the world. And as you would expect, we're going through kind of a transformation. We're always going through a transformation. We've had a little bit of stagnation within the hardware sector. Not as many headsets released last year as you would anticipate. But this is kind of the breakdown. I still look at it as you have the VR ecosystem, you have the both, which, we're pretty much out of the realm now. Certainly, I would say in the United States, but in other countries, from my previous regional chart, you're still seeing usage of things like Google Cardboard and Android, and using mobile devices to enable some of those VR capabilities. So it's not, you don't want to throw that to the wayside. It's important to understand kind of that there are different regional differences there. If you think about the augmented space, we're certainly maturing at a good clip there. Of course, HoloLens 2 is probably the biggest one in this space. And we're already starting to see some glasses that are more akin to what we'd expect come into the ecosystem, whether it be some prototype glasses from Snap, or it might be some Vuzix or Nreal and things like that. And ultimately, we're all wanting to go to some of that form factor, as I'll mention later on. The big one that everybody's been watching about, there's been lots of rumors and everybody's been following it, is Apple going to release something that is an AR VR combo device, or is it going to be primarily an AR device? I'll talk a little bit about that in a moment, but that's kind of the ecosystem right now. We're kind of looking at, in the VR side, I would say we're in the 6th generation. And I measure it in kind of thinking about where we have evolved the platform, as well as where we have evolved the technology. So certainly we're in a race on the VR ecosystem between resolution and processing power, both offline and off connection, non-tethered, as well as devices that are going to be more mobile based, which the ones that are less tethered do tend to provide a better experience if you're trying to do training and other types of experiences like that. On the AR side, we still have a smaller market. The biggest thing is, of course, Magic Leap has made a resurgence back into the news a little bit, and there are the Magic Leap 2 should be around in the ecosystem, and that should actually provide some interesting competition, really, within the overall AR and VR ecosystem. So I'm really excited about that. But if we think about it in general, to kind of sum it up, VR hardware, we're probably in about a 6th generation or 5.5 generation. We lost a little bit. AR, we're trailing probably a couple years behind, probably about the 3rd or 4th generation. Probably about the 3rd or 2nd, 3rd or 4th. So when I'm often talking about this with just kind of people, whether it be in the industry or different areas, I kind of like to break this down a little bit and kind of say, what are some of the benefits of some of these different technologies that you have in the industry. So when you think about wireless mounted headsets like the Oculus Quest 2 or the HTC Vive 3, we're really got the quick capabilities. They're portable. There's no computers. You can have some complex interactions, including hands. If you're using controllers, you can use haptic capabilities. You can really build out complete environments, but you have to really reduce your polys a lot on the experience because of some of the challenges there. In addition to that, we now have more and more devices in this ecosystem are adopting hand tracking possibilities, And I think that we'll continue to see more trends of adding different IoT devices to help us augment experiences. Certainly, it'll be great to have more devices that can enable leg interactions and other types of exterior devices inside of your virtual world. When you think about the head-mounted ecosystem for VR, really the big capabilities there are higher poly rendering. When you're looking at it, you're going to be able to really push a lot of graphic power to some of these devices. And you don't have to worry so much about decimation, which is a term we often refer to when we're trying to optimize a scene or a rendering scene for an environment for the memory and such. We're getting higher resolution displays. It's much like if you think about the TV industry, where people are kind of going through and saying, let's go ahead and let's get an 8K, let's get a 4K, let's get an 8K. We're starting to see that level of competition happening specifically in the VR industry and specifically in the head-mounted area as well. These, with a lot of the the XR capabilities and the XR standardization now, we've actually got a lot more cross-platform experiences now with new toolkits that can enable all the devices to inherit the same type of interactions and systems. So that's really good for the ecosystem in general, because it'll help us to be able to build things faster and quicker and not worry so much about the technological hurdles, but focus on the end experience and the customer experiences that we're trying to build. There's certainly, when you're using the head-mounted, you can use additional trackers and tracker methodologies, as well as you can build a lot more custom, real, and less simulated graphic limitations to that type of experience. So that's just kind of a quick overview. When you think about this, I mentioned some of those examples earlier, right? So in a couple of key areas, you think about real estate, using this to simulate environments whereby someone could step into a house. Certainly in this last few years, or last year of pandemic challenges, trying to go look at a house, trying to understand if it was a viable thing was not really on the table for a lot of people. And so the VR market certainly had a huge, has stepped up in many different ways due to the different tools, whether it be some of the mapping environments that would transition the real world environment directly into a VR experience. So someone could step into an apartment or step into a house. We saw that happen a lot more. Retail and transportation, financial, there's still a lot of exploration that needs to be done there. I don't think we've quite figured out what the right mixture is, specifically for the shopping experiences. The quickest thing that people tend to dive to is, oh, well, let me just shop, my Walmart or my Home Depot or another big box retail store in VR. But what is that really giving you without having some of that tactile feedback and that tactile sensation? And so, or as well as being able to physically try on the items and testing for fit. What's interesting though is I don't think there's too many hurdles to overcome there if as different companies put effort into these different areas, because at the end of the day, we know that through models like Zappos and other things, people don't necessarily need to try on product to purchase product. So we just got to create that connection that allows people in the retail sector to be able to feel confident that they can purchase product in these VR ecosystems and get that product that they purchased. On the health and medical area, we're seeing a lot of surgery simulation is happening, as well as educational tools too, to help people understand better about how to perform surgery when they're not in an ideal situation, whether they be in an area that doesn't have that medical support. I know for many years we've been talking about this through holoportation with HoloLens and such, but we're starting to see a lot more pieces of software in the industry specifically related to doing health and medical aspects. Entertainment, Altspace VR, a lot of the social platforms have a very high usage base. I believe last time I looked, it would say Altspace was about 350,000 users a month concurrently. I could be off on that number, don't quote me on it, but one of the things is that there's definitely a lot of people that have kind of adopted this sense of presence for themselves in VR worlds. eventually, hopefully, we'll see that in some of the AR ecosystems as we get more into the AR cloud and the ability to connect and have a persistence to those augmentations in our real world. But it is exciting to see that there's certainly a lot of brand focus aspects for VR, whether it be branded games or branded activities. But I'm actually thinking that there's going to tend to be a lot more as we open up on the AR spectrum of things. And then if we think about training education, this is actually, I share this because I try out a lot of these applications. I experience them. I look at the experience. And this one here, I actually was really fond of on the Oculus Quest, the last one, which was teaching me Portuguese. And it was very fun. It was interesting to be in the situations. I think it still has a little ways to go. Some of the voice APIs are a little bit challenging at times, but it's exciting to see that this type of technology could really be used. And because of the way that VR immerses you in the moment, it made it a lot more realistic to the situation and scenario. And I was focusing more on the scenario and less on the technology. And that's what's going to be really crucial as we see a lot of this evolve. Excuse me. So on the augmented reality side, when I broke these down, I tend to look at them from a couple different areas of capabilities. So we still have a huge segment of population, depending on where you are in the region of the world, mobile devices in the iPhone and Android sector in the US. Billions of people are using devices every day. We've evolved with ARKit and AR Core much further than a lot of people realize. So we can do a lot of complex AR things on devices, such as basic plane tracking and object positioning and scalable deployments and custom interfaces. And the biggest limitation, of course, with the mobile devices is going to be you either have to use a stand or you have to hold the device to actually go through the experience and become part of it, right? So when you think about the head-mounted devices, the HoloLens 2, the Magic Leap, and hopefully a couple other forthcoming ones, the biggest benefit right out of the gate is the hands-free experience and kind of removing that tether. Now, the challenge there is still battery life. It's always going to be one of the biggest pain points that we have in the ecosystem right now is battery life. Battery life and comfort kind of go hand in hand there when you think about those from a usability standpoint. You can get to the more sophisticated plane tracking because you have higher capability in these devices for GPUs. But still, at the end of the day, they're still running approximately mobile GPUs. I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot more investment in different types of mobile GPUs that's going to help us to actually support different types of capabilities, more neural processing, things like that, on these upcoming devices. There are really some leading technology frameworks. Of course, if you haven't had a chance, I know Ron has worked with this one as well out there, but MRTK is a great framework. It really works kind of from an interoperability standpoint, cross-platform, and can be used in both your HoloLens as well as in your VR ecosystems. So I definitely recommend giving that a try and checking that out if you haven't done so. With some of these devices, there is scalable enterprise deployments available. And then, of course, we get some of the more fun things that I like to work with advanced gestures and interactions and physically using your hands and eye gazes and things like that to interact with the world around you. So it's pretty exciting to see some of those aspects. Taking a look at those same sectors, as I mentioned before, these are some things that we were working on. A demo for kind of showing off some things specifically for real estate and construction and how a new area would be developed and redeveloped and how that could change, and having that with mobile devices, not necessarily full scale, but being able to see that and understand what's going to be there and how that's going to adjust. Retail and transportation, of course, biggest one I see is IKEA and all the other devices of placing furniture in your environment and placing it and being able to see how it looks and does it match the right lighting, does it match the right color scheme. This is another one we worked on here, health and medical, where we're kind of sharing diseases of the heart. And then another one over here, this is just an example, specifically showing off kind of interacting at the actual sports venue, showing people what's going to happen, or rather, excuse me, bringing that second screen experience into AR, specifically at the game and at the environment. And then training education, we've seen a lot of experiments specifically with NASA and the HoloLens, and working on ideas for the Mars missions and such. And many years ago, I showed a demo of some things that some companies using the Leap motion devices and a couple other devices to kind of refine their prototyping process. I can tell you, like, most of the way that I approach process evolution now inside of product design within AR VR is typically I will jump into VR and start to conceptualize how it is, because it's much easier to think through that. And that's what a lot of these technologies really have to be. It has to be more than just the sum of, I'm going to use this because it's cool. Well, that is one factor, but it also has to be more about thinking about, how am I going to use this in a way that's practical, makes sense for both myself, my business, and my end customers. This is a chart I kind of put together. I always like to talk about the dimensions of reality and the breakdown of reality, and kind of how these different levels will impact or influence immersion and presence. And so if you think about this as a spectrum, kind of from real environment to partial augmentation of environment to full pass-through environment to a simulated, this chart will basically kind of talk through each of those levels of immersion, being how engaged are you in the moment of the experience and the augmentation that you're looking at, presence, how emotionally are you connected to it, and then of course, what are the capabilities? If you're working on a mobile device, you're limited from a UX perspective in how many interactions you really want to push through that screen, and the types of information you want to show. You want to have backups and such. And then where is the audience reach? And so based upon those factors there, I've kind of come up with a spectrum that I'll continue to evolve this, I think, as the years go on, how different types of devices will react in this world. So for instance, real environment, of course, is our best baseline. Then we look at partial augmentation, and we start to see that, we have a large audience reach for mobile devices, but then, the amount of interactions are limited and stagnated because of the two-dimensional screen, and your presence gets immediately interrupted, and your immersion as well. But as we move towards pass-through, which we started to see a lot more of these experiments recently with some of the Oculus Quest and some of the later Vive devices, is you can start to see how the real-world objects or facsimiles of the digital objects can start to interplay into your virtual experience. And it starts to give you this kind of mixed world, mixed reality, if you will, but it's kind of a different variation because this is really on the VR spectrum. And when we look at that, the amount of immersion is certainly kind of starting to lift up a little bit when you think about being able to, grab a glass on your desk and understand where it is, and have the VR device itself realize where it is, give you a fake outline of it with its low-level camera. Hopefully those cameras get better. And then being able to, drink the water without having to take your headset off. I know there's many times in early stages of VR where I have knocked over objects on my desk because I'm immersed in the moment of the experience, but you lose track of the real world. So it becomes a challenge when you're trying to build those types of experiences. When you think about fully simulated virtual experiences, that's like a fully headset mounted VR. You're all in that moment, right? And the immersion is really meant to, it can be increased or decreased depending on how you as the designer and developer of that experience want to change it up. The amount of presence, of course, what do you want people to emotionally feel? And then the interaction capabilities. Well, we're using controllers. A lot of that has standardized now around physics and physical grabbing an object, pulling an object, touching an object. You won't always get the haptic level feedback. That's another ecosystem I'm hoping will start to evolve rapidly, is actually getting to feel and touch VR simulations and ecosystems and feel real sensation. but we are definitely getting close enough to impact both the immersion and the presence as people are working in these ecosystems and this environment. And then, of course, when you think about the headset-mounted devices, there is a high level of immersion because you're seeing the world around you, and you can start to see that. But that can easily be off-put if the output quality is not on par with what you would expect to see in the real world. You kind of get the matrix principle there, where you start to get this uncanny valley component of, is that real? Well, it's glitching around me. It may not be real. It may not pull me into that experience in the way that was anticipated. But the audience reach right now is fairly small on those devices. So if you're thinking about this, just kind of like where should you be creating? Like if you're understanding where to create in this ecosystem, really there are approximately 1.5 billion iOS devices out there that are AR capable. They have various limitations depending on that. And as I mentioned before, it's going to be heavily region specific, working with some of our regions and areas, doing experiences that are built on for AR on the latest Android device or the latest iOS device is a possibility. In some of the other regions, like I mentioned, South America and other areas, because of either infrastructure or because of not access to the high-speed data networks, or of course just devices in the general populace, you have to think about what type of experience makes sense to build and kind of where you bring it down from there. So there are a lot of challenges in that, but certainly there are customers that exist across this spectrum. And with just the device in most of our pockets today, we can enable a ton of capabilities. Chances are, when you think about VR, this is a chart I've been gathering for many years and trying to keep track of the numbers and do the best I can to. It's very hard to pull all these numbers and from different sources, and also my own research and watching all the different news channels for years. I try to keep track of this as best as possible, but PSVR and Oculus Quest 2 is doing quite well. They're doing quite well in the ecosystem. We had about 5 million plus headsets. I'm assuming we're going to probably sell more Oculus Quest 2 headsets probably over the Christmas season. They're still in stock, at least in the US, I've noticed, but there's certainly some price cuts going on there, which is going to definitely give people better access to them. At least in the United States, Oculus Go device, which is kind of first introduction there from the consumer side, is technically deprecated technology, but that doesn't mean that there still are not a lot of people using this device or still have some of these in operation. In addition to that, the Oculus Quest still sold quite a decent amount too, approximately. A Valve, those are some of the estimates on the Valve. And then we continue down ViPro, ViFocus, the ViFocus 3, and a couple of, that's actually fairly new at the time I put these numbers together. So I don't think there's really any sales data that I could even potentially guess at this point. Oculus Rifts, and then Pimax, has some lead in there, but they're definitely doing a great job, I would say, in kind of evolving the technology. One of my favorite things about them, and I don't work for them or anything like that, but the fact that they're allowing us, people in the technical, in this space that's constantly changing, to trade in some of their devices and upgrade to newer ones. I think that model is eventually going to come to kind of all of the different industries across the AR and VR sector, because the cost can certainly be prohibitive on a number of levels. And then Pico 3 was just released not too long ago. And we did not get an Oculus Quest 2 Pro, unfortunately, this year, as we did anticipate, but most likely due to some of the chip issues. And also because when you have such a large market lead, it's kind of hard to roll out another particular type of product. You want to kind of wait and ride on the heels of that. So rapid technology in the AR space, we're starting to see a lot of encouraging growth in these devices, and certainly some of the headset mounted devices are the things that we're watching. I've been trying out some Nreal devices and a couple other ones in the ecosystem, but Vuzix has been around for a while, and they have a number of different devices that typically could be a single eye. They're not necessarily going to be full high resolution, but they're being used already in the field. HoloLens 1, by the end of its generation, or its cell generation, was probably about 350,000 units. HoloLens 2 is definitely selling better, but it is a very expensive piece of equipment to have. Magic Leap 1 didn't do as well as everybody anticipated, as we're all aware of, but of course there's making a resurgence, and I say in development, but I believe probably there's some initial late level prototypes floating around, and next year we'll start to see some more on that. Nreal is releasing more of kind of a glasses with a GPU pack, similar to the Magic Leap device. And those definitely have some good form factor. I was really impressed by the high definition resolution in them, but they're primarily focused on overseas markets at this point in time. Apple, it's a big question mark in everybody's mind. The rumor mill is swirling on this left and right, but we do believe that sometime next year something will release, and I'll talk about that in a moment in my predictions for the year in the past. If we look at Magic Leap, Vive Flow, it launched. This is just my belief, is I don't know how well it's going to do personally in the United States. I think it's primarily a market testing device to kind of see where's the audience demand at, and it does have a lot of potential, but there's going to be a lot of trial and error along the way as we work to figure out what really ultimately will replace the mobile phone in your pocket. Will it be a pair of glasses? Will it be a pair of glasses with a packed device, much like the Walkman back in the day? So what does the future hold for AR and VR? Those people that are in industry that are aware of this is, this is where we're trying to go. But the biggest challenge to that is first going to be battery life, as well as not being able to not degrading the user experience. And that's going to really depend upon a number of factors. It's going to depend upon understanding the world around us, being able to compute that data, being able to add persistence to it. So the user experience is a ginormous bucket of aspects within there. I mention this because I always like to tell people kind of where we're headed. I've done a lot of work on AR Cloud and AR Cloud-based solutions and such, and this is my own interpretation of kind of how that structure works, and different layers of information really act as these gateways to the experiences. If you think about the traditional World Wide Web today, where you go to a .com, a .edu, we need to have that level of classification to be able to filter out the noise that's around the world and the noise that's in the environment. I know I've shared in the past many years several of the experiences that I've had with different holographic devices, and my home is basically filled with holograms all over the place, but there's no classification and no order to it, so it's very chaotic. And in order to really get this into the mindset and then make it usable for everybody, we got to kind of challenge some of these information architecture challenges. And so this is kind of some of my proposed thought process and separation to these structures. And if you're out on LinkedIn and you follow me, I share a lot more of these different pieces of information and such. And I think one of the biggest things is certainly going to be security, and eventually someone's going to come along and create a API AR security layer to be able to address some of this, so that people can feel confident that they're interacting with holograms and augmented reality in a way that's going to make sense to them personally. So let's take a look back real quick at my predictions. I make a number of predictions, and then I like to, in this particular presentation, I look and say what was true and what was changed and what didn't come to pass, for whatever reason. It's fun, but it's also keeps me on my toes to constantly look ahead to see where we're going and see how close I am to reality of the virtual reality ecosystem. So some of the past predictions: HoloLens reaches maturity and considers stable dev platform. Certainly that's happened with MRTK. When we take a look at the device capabilities of MRTK integrating within the HoloLens, and the various HoloLens SDKs that are existing, we are now it's much easier to develop holographic experiences. The UI, the UX has improved. Mind you, it's still very Windows based, and that's most likely of a Microsoft thing. But it does allow you to build this kind of consistency across omni channels when you're trying to build out an experience specifically for AR. And a lot of some of the other things that I mentioned in the previous year was due to COVID. There was going to be a reduction in manufacturing, should resolve. We are probably about a year behind now, I would say, from kind of some of my earlier predictions. And most of that's probably in the manufacturing, primarily in the microchips section, because a lot of that shifted around to go to different areas. We certainly see this just in the car industry ourselves in the United States, but we're going to definitely see this impact not just in the US, but around the world. AR Cloud will be a more prominent reel to those in the know. I think it did become a little bit more prominent, but I can't say it made the adjustment and transformation that I expected it to yet. So kind of off on that one a little bit, but that's okay. Web VR cross-platform capability will improve. So we're certainly seeing this now with the ability for things like A-Frame. If you haven't had a chance to use it, it's a fantastic framework. Enables a lot of cross-platform capability for web-based experiences. And now that some of the XR standards and specs have kind of solidified a little bit, I believe in the 1.0 spectrum, we really have the possibility to do some really amazing things and make them exist on different levels. Oculus Quest has a huge potential spike. This is something I predicted about a year and a half ago, probably a little bit longer than that, depending cost. And of course, the cost started to reduce lately, so we're probably going to see another huge spike in it. But yes, that definitely tended to hold true. Medical and production facilities has been heavily in tech talent new roles. We did start to see right before COVID, definitely an increase in training and education expenditures in, I would say, the medical sector, specifically looking at things that were non-COVID related. After COVID hit, there was more people looking at how can we use this to do viral sequencing and things like that. So we definitely did see some changes there. New prototyping methods. Sadly, this hasn't really come to pass as much as I wanted to. There are a few tools out there for prototyping. I personally tend to prototype in VR, even for AR, because it allows me to manipulate the environments much quicker. A number of tools I'm happy to announce that I use. I use Sketchbox. I started to use Shapes XR, which is one of the first prototyping tools officially, I would say, on the Oculus Quest device. So that opens up a whole new avenue. On the AR space, I use A-Frame for doing a lot of prototyping really quickly as well. AR.js and a couple other different frameworks. And then, of course, I use Unity a lot for doing conceptual prototypes and blocking out scenes and scenarios. But I haven't used the tilt brush as much this year, but certainly I was hoping to see more entries into this space. There's Adobe Aerial out there for doing AR prototyping, but it's still very practical based, meaning you really have to be thinking about the experience you're working on. Whereas I like to look at a prototype tool as a little bit more kind of wide field of dreams, so I can really kind of create and do things that haven't been done before. Apple will tease a device Q3, Q4. Well, that actually did happen. The teasing was coming quite a bit. This was actually from about 2 years ago with that prediction, but it's really exciting to see that hopefully that device will actually manifest next year. Investment heavily in microelectronics, micro displays. So this did not happen, most likely because of the microchip shortage. There's a lot of challenge. And then there was a lot of issues, which I mentioned before, with some of the trade wars, specifically with China and some other countries, that did make the cost of producing some of these devices go up a lot. I mean, even right now, if you look at the price of graphic cards for just running VR experiences on PCs, they're pretty expensive right now. And that some of the higher end graphic cards are just not in the purchasable range, I would say, for an average consumer that's trying to work on some of these newer VR experiences. Unity maintains lead. I mentioned this clearly. Well, the market shows this, but also just the sheer scope of capabilities that you can use with Unity. I'm very impressed with that. Magic Leap made a comeback. It did make a comeback, or is trying to make a comeback with a lot of shuffling around. It'll be really exciting to see what's happened there. I know that their tool set has definitely evolved. I've played with it. It's become more mature in the deployment models. The SDK is a lot more mature as well. VR content will solidify and create a few pocket platform niches for industries. We started to see this, but it's not as much as I really wanted to in some of these platforms. I think we're going to see a lot more of that coming up. VR is not dead. Well, I mean, that's kind of a trick question there, but a lot of people are like, VR is dead. Well, it's always, I think it's here to stay. I mean, I know it's here to stay now because we're going into the 6th generation of new headsets. So certainly. Last, mom and pop mixed reality arcades will pop up. Well, they're hopefully opening up again. That's good news. The location-based systems. And then because of COVID, did shut down and stagnate. I know we lost the void here in Dallas. Hopefully that comes back. It was a great experience, and it was a fun time. B2B sales of VR hardware and investments will increase. Well, that's certainly going to be the case. 2022 future predictions. These are just kind of a year-long look at where I kind of see things happening. HoloLens 2, I do expect it's going to double some of its active users. It's still pretty strong, pretty powerful device. I don't think it's reached full potential yet, even though we're technically in about a 3-year refresh cycle. Apple's going to introduce its AR/VR headset potentially. I do believe that this is going to probably be more for B2B. I don't know how they're going to get a customer to swallow a price point below $3,000 unless they do something that's really amazing. Now, they certainly have been building the technology into their AR into the Neuro chipset, into the phone with the AR kit. So we'll see. Formerly Facebook, is going to release probably a pro device, most likely based on the XR2 chipset, or maybe an upgrade. Magic Leap 2 will go into large groups. And Real, I think, is going to at some point trying to make a push for US markets with their glasses. I think that would be a wise decision because it is really a pretty amazing device. The high definition on it's pretty amazing. Niantic has released the Lightship about 2 weeks ago. I've been working with it a lot, the SDK, trying to learn it and understand it. There's some really great meta classification capabilities in it. And I do believe there's no Geo SDK yet that's launched as part of that. If that launches and they expose that piece, there's going to be some really amazing things that I think we can build with that. Meta, I think, will release something similar to Microsoft's Mesh, maybe as an SDK, as a new Facebook SDK. Pimax headset, and I know we certainly anticipate a new one coming out. There will be headset devices. AR probably will start to move into the 4th generation. As I said, I classify them as different based upon the technology and usage and how cost and what technology exists inside of the device. And then we have VR devices will probably enter into about a 6th generation. Thankfully, we're going to see a slow return of hopefully location-based reality locations, such as like the Void and other types of smaller ones. I've already seen them open up across the US in a number of areas, despite the fact that we still have some COVID challenges. And then I think Unity is still going to maintain that XR lead, certainly in the platform capabilities. They've adopted a lot of standardization in the XR, in the specs that allow for interoperability between the developments, different types of development environments, whether it be mobile, VR, etc. So I'm really excited about a lot of that. And then if we just take a quick look out, this is just kind of long term. This is all just pure speculation from watching the environment for many, many years and kind of seeing where things are. Quest 3, of course, we do know that it's definitely going to come out for Meta at some point. I don't think it's going to come out right away. I think it probably won't come out for another year or so. But we do know most companies now are trying to get on this kind of 2 to 3 refresh year cycle for this type of technology, which will potentially open up the doorway to being able to have people trade in technology and then kind of get on the same ecosystem model that we have with our phones today, Android and iOS. I'm hoping we're going to see some more collected planar SDKs that are going to enable some of these localized AR cloud systems for businesses. For instance, being able to understand the context and of locations and being able to start to put holograms in meaningful places that make sense and work as part of the environment. I still think we've got a little ways to go there, but I think that there's some challenge. There's some good work that's been shown around this, and eventually people are going to start building out SDKs supporting this just directly. Certainly, Niantic is most likely working on this aspect as well as a number of other companies. WebXR is going to evolve to support native APIs. The big challenge here is really just the browsers. And then start to see many form factors reduce considerably on devices. We're already seeing this. This is really great. I think we're going to see considerably more device reducing the size of the device while not reducing necessarily ergonomics or the ability for the device to feel good on your head. But we will start to see some of the devices. We'll have to see in tandem with that battery consumption go down as well, because most likely the GPU consumption is going to continue to go up, as we know. Vive should be releasing I anticipate in 2023 Vive will release some type of AR headset or new VR headset before that time frame as well. We'll revisit this next year. And then we have the arrival of XR3. So this is my prediction that Qualcomm did really well with the XR2 chipset at the end part of about a year and a half ago, getting into the chip manufacturer's hands to be able to build some of these hardware pieces. I always mention this in some of my talks, is follow the chipsets to see kind of where the technology is going to evolve. And that's still one of the truths here. Niantic, I still think, is actually working on their own secret little headset in the background. Pokemon Go launched a revolution of AR and people understanding it. Probably not the same use case as people were expecting, but I do think there's a lot to say with producing a device that can allow people to interact in the world. And certainly they have an audience pool today still. HoloLens 3 announced probably around 2023, I think. If you think about the chips, and they've taken a lot of their own development in-house now with their own chipsets, most likely. It's not going to come out right away. It's going to be really interesting if we see it in one of the devices like Apple appear suddenly. That might just throw everybody off. Haptic gloves, I'm hoping that the reduce in size will happen, meaning that they're going to reduce in size so that being able to touch VR is going to be much more possible. Meta will release some AR glasses, non-snap related. It's still weird saying Meta, but Facebook is most likely, they've done some glasses on the snap side, some demo glasses for people, but they're probably going to release some things out there on the non-snap side. Web VR adoption becomes considerable. Certainly we're seeing this with A-Frame and a lot of these other different technologies that you can now partake of VR experiences through your VR headset in a web browser without a lot of additional work. And then XR standards paving the way for some of the AR cloud. So that was a lot of information, and I know there's probably a lot of questions you have out there, but this is kind of that time frame where I just send a lot of information out your way, and it's really meant to say, here's kind of some of the different areas of the industry, and here's someone that's kind of on the inside watching it and also building in it and designing in it and excited by it every day. So I'd like to, on behalf of the Dallas AR VR group, we'd love to have you at one of our meetups. We hold an Outspace and hopefully back in person here at some point. And if you want to learn more information, you can certainly follow me on LinkedIn. Hit this QR code up. I share a ton of information on all aspects across the AR VR space, and if you want to be in the know on a lot of this, this is the place to go. And I'd like to thank Ron in the background there, who's moderating, if he's back there. Hey, oh, nice. So Ron, what are you wearing there, just for the last moment? Oh, you're muted, my friend.
I was just looking at this. This is the Snapchat one.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that was very appropriate for you to come on the stream at the last few minutes there with that on and show some of this.
Right.
They do look really cool, though, right? That make you look kind of cool.
Yeah, it is an AR device. That's pretty much what I can talk about it.
I know. Yeah. So other than that, that's about it. So I'd like to thank you on behalf of Rod and I, and enjoy the rest. Or if there's, I think we're almost at the end of Global XR for today, right?
Yeah, for today, definitely.
So we'd love to have you go out there and check out some more of the talks and the events. And I'd like to thank them for having us. And certainly we'll post some more information out there, and I'll post this deck out there as well later on.
Yes, definitely. Well, thank you very much, Preston. Currently, the questions that we can, that is available out there. For some reason, we cannot connect to Discord, or have connected to some people, and they could not connect to our Discord channel for discussion. And I'm not sure if anyone else have questions, because it has a long list to get to it. It is actually, when you click on the YouTube video and go to the description, you can go to the Discord and join. That's one way we can get the questions. So far, there are none.
Discord questions out there, Ron?
Yeah, so far there are none, because a lot of people are having trouble connecting to that channel, and so we don't have any questions. But I did post on our meetup. If anyone have questions, maybe we can invite people to our meetup space.
Yeah.
And maybe that would be something that we can showcase here. So if you are interested in joining our meetup group, we usually meet now every quarter, or is it every other month?
Every other month right now, I would say.
Every other month we do meet virtually in Outspace. But for this event, if you want to connect there, you can post questions. If you have any for our audience, our local audience here in Dallas, if you have questions about the presentation today, I would be monitoring that. There is also,
the only thing I would say is, obviously we're based in Dallas, but opening this up to the world, we love to have lots of people come out and meet us in Altspace and other different platforms when we're out there. So if anything that is good there, we actually are having an opportunity to meet with people from all over the US, but also all over the world as well.
Yeah, so, that's the good thing about the Outspace, right? Every time we would have these meetings, a lot of people are from, not necessarily just in Dallas, but sometimes in Texas, sometimes in different parts of the United States. It's good to network and do these events, because it's really, really educational.
Definitely.
Than that, it's we've had this meetup for how many years now? This is our 5th year, right? 5th year doing this.
Well, actually, I would say it's probably 6, because
6th year.
I only started the year in review like a year in after the fact. I started a little bit later. I wanted to kind of start a tradition to kind of many people coming out. Okay, what happened last year? And I'm like, okay, hold on, let's go through it, right? And it I almost could do it like a Billy Joel song, where it's like we didn't start the fire and then we start singing the whole line of all the stuff that happened in the ecosystem. But it's fun too, because we get to share that information with people that are not just businesses, but also end developers. And that's what's unique about our Dallas ARVU group, is that it's a lot of our community, but it's also a lot of people that are, so to speak, in the code, developing things and trying out new technologies. And you have to have a lot of patience in this space, everybody, because at the end of the day, it's things are going to break a lot. Things are going to break a lot.
And it's of course it's new technology, right? It's always evolving, and there's always something new coming up, and it's good to network and contact and connect with people to understand that technology, where it's where we can use it, and what's the best use case, and what we can do about it, especially if you're trying to if you're new, or even if it's not just necessarily on the development side, right? Because that's the reason why we have it as a immersive design and development. It's not just it's a group collaboration between just the design and also the development side of these.
The other thing, another thing for those out there, I have a Twitch channel now too that I'm working on, Preston Reality, that I'll start to share some different tutorials and stuff out there and do a little bit more live talking. As time
post that in the chat so we can share this. And this would be a good. So just post it on the comment there, and I'll show it to the group, because that really helps.
Yeah, so it's going to be my Twitch account. I've been doing podcasts in the past, but kind of wanted to try some new mediums, and I love sharing both techniques with people, prototyping, and certainly that's something that a lot of people are like, how do you do this, or how do you get started? That's the number one question I think we get. How do you get started in this field? And so certainly can talk a lot about that and share some of that knowledge. So, well, I think that's about it for me.
Didn't you say you also teach classes too, right?
Oh, yeah.
SMU, right.
If you want to take a course from me, I do. I teach through the smu.edu/UX. Co-founder, as I mentioned before, of the UX program. So I'm very practical and pragmatic on how I approach things. And then I also do an elective that I'm retooling now specifically for teaching multidimensional design systems and how to think through challenges that are presented when you think about AR and VR and designing for these ecosystems. So, and there's probably other classes I'm secretly working on too, but for the most part, that's kind of it. It's kind of like Ron's glasses a moment ago. I'm not going to share all of the details. I got to leave some type of clip for everybody.
Definitely. Because there's a lot of this field has a lot of good innovation and what's coming up. And actually these days I've been learning a lot about these Lens Studio, understanding that, and I think it's amazing, and how integrated and all the things that you can do just on Lens Studio itself, and what just the hand tracking, and also the different body tracking, also object detection, all these different things that you can do. Even if you're not a developer, it's a good place to start your design. And also that has that extensibility. Especially if you are a JavaScript developer, that would be a good place to get started with how you would integrate into Snapchat. Also the same way as in Facebook, right?
I think too, Ron, one of the things I mentioned in the talk was, I've had some chance to play with Lightship a little bit, Niantic's new SDK. Some really cool things in there that I've had some opportunity to build some conceptual ideas around in code, and I think that's what's fun about this field too, is because we never know what is going to be what we're going to build the next day, or what we could potentially create. I think that was the fun thing. The first thing I think Ron and I built when we were working on the group was, Ron, I want to shoot fireballs at you in AR. How do I do that, right? In our HoloLens devices, and we
that is true.
hooked up a little mini server and figured out how to share the coordinates of each other, and then next thing you know, Ron is a wizard in my room, and I'm shooting fireballs at him across the city. So
Yes.
That's it. It's fun and exciting to do that, and it's very rewarding when you dive into one of these new technologies and go, I get it, I understand it now. How can I use it in a way that's going to make sense and be practical?
That
I'm
is
all
true.
about practical.
Yeah, and in terms of practicality, having it as a shared VR or shared AR really makes that immersion and really makes a difference in
Yeah,
terms of how you would approach these devices. Uh,
exactly.
you know, unlike the same way as you would have these online games, right?
Yeah,
And online games is way better than just single person shooter games and all that. And be able to expand that network and be able to expand you know I guess that's the whole reason why that metaverse is one thing that's coming up lately,
the
right?
tool we have now for content creators above and beyond just development is gotten a lot better. So from the day when I first started working with HoloLens and punching a wall every day because I'm like, what happened? Nothing changed in my
That's
code between day one to day two. What's the problem now, right? Um,
mhm.
the standardization as well as the capabilities within some of these SDKs has definitely improved. I'm really impressed with the improvements to the SDK for Magic Leap for Lumen. Um,
Really.
yeah, looking at the latest versions of Lumen and getting that back up and working on my device. It's come a long way from day one, and even when we were at a hackathon.
Yeah, a few years ago.
Yeah, feels like a lifetime ago.
I miss the this in session, right, events that we have,
Yeah,
because that's a good time for us to especially end of the year like this. We would have how many
we'd have
attendees? Around 30
people.
people around that same
It's a busy time and
group.
it's fun. So it's fortunate we're
40
still
people,
workful, um,
yeah.
but it'll happen. Ron and I have been planning a few other things around the XR VR space for a few years now. We're just waiting for the right moments to share some of that information again. But hopefully, the world will be a better place. I don't know what else to say. It's kind of weird overall,
Yeah, with all these different events. I mean, it also opens up that capabilities of the VR because
Yeah,
of the pandemic. So there's, I guess, silver linings if you consider that, right? Because of the technology, it's ready for it and was able to scale. It still have some network, but it's not the same, right? The fully
yeah,
immersion, like what you were saying in your presentation, is being there, right there in front of people.
yeah. Well, I like the holoportation component because I mean, yeah, but I want to be able to do it with just my iPhones. Just a series of iPhones and do it on the cheap, just to be able to do that. So yeah, I am working on something um, specifically to play a little bit more with some avatars, just creating avatars. So I'm excited about that.
Different avatars for
Yeah,
every device.
yeah. So I'm potentially gonna have someone commission an avatar for me. I have them do some stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, because I want to try a few things in AR and VR with it, and a couple different unique things. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, how do you envision Avatar in AR?
I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know. That I was thinking about it. It's like, yeah, that is something that you know that is different because we
It'll
granted it's going to improve in VR. It's going
It'll
to be
probably be a
mostly
secondary.
however it is.
It'll probably be a secondary rebroadcast of myself with a live interactive IK bone mapping
Well, that's
to
true.
represent myself and capture my mocap and be able to basically present though as the avatar versus the me.
So is it an avatar around you? Because they may,
Yeah,
if the
yeah,
presence is there, you can actually see the person if it's
yeah.
in the same room or
I
however.
don't know yet fully how it's going to manifest, but that's the truth. And a lot of what we do is we don't know fully how this stuff is going to ultimately work.
Yeah,
But we're working on some of this craziness, right?
yeah,
Uh, but what's great
absolutely.
about it is everybody has to feel comfortable to want to be able to, like I said, you have to dive into this, and you really have to exist in the medium.
Mhm.
You have to exist in virtual reality. That sounds like a new quote I could probably put out. You have to exist in VR in order to be part of VR, and that's really important. Is to understand how people like to uh, to work, play, and exist in this medium. Yeah, we see all this great stuff like in Ready Player One and stuff, but how much of that is real? Like where would it fall apart? The immersion. So, but
Right.
all right. Well, I actually have to head out to a next meeting. So I'd
Mhm.
like to thank you all again. Have a great
Okay.
one, and we'll see you again.
I'll see you guys later.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.